Alright, hello. How are we doing today? We're gonna turn our neon nerd on right now because we're in school. You're doing good? Good to hear. As you requested, we are doing the terraforming. Why don't you go ahead and give me something specific about terraforming that you want me to talk about first? So like, say for example, if you're struggling with ideas, it could be cliffs, it could be creating custom terraforming, it could be caves, landscape. What specifically about landscape? Like pathways, hills, cliffs, anything specific? Because keep in mind that terraforming is one of the most broad topics there is. Saying terraforming and then just saying landscape, that is basically everything. Give me something to work off of. Hills and pathways. Okay, that's something I can work off of. So, with hills and pathways, of course, we are currently on a super flat world. There is a lot of terraforming to do on this world. So, what you can do with hills is one thing. Just if you see a bland patch of grass, just elevate it a tad. So, with grass, of course, you can just elevate it by a single block. Another thing you can do is what I specifically call um hollowing. Other people might just call it like shell or like I think you get the point, right? Basically, what you're doing is you create a hollow version of the land that you want. Go to the other side, and I'll do something like this, right? So now I've got 4 points. Now I'll just join those points. Once I've joined these points, basically what I've now created is just I've created a template. Quite simply, that's what I've done. I've created a template. Basically, what templates are these things. Basically, a lot of the time we use wool, but we can just use regular blocks as well, especially if we know what we're doing. So once I've created this template, I then pretty much know exactly where I want everything to go. And then I can go up layer by layer. You're trying to make something that's smooth while not being able to make something that's entirely smooth. If you get what I mean. So like I'll be creating shapes and that don't really make sense for Minecraft. Then you'll see it as like, oh, that actually does make sense. It's not in the way that I thought it would make sense, right? But you see how I've now created this dirt mound. And like, it actually looks kind of natural. Say for example, right here, I can elevate this even further. Then I can make this a drop. So now we've created something a bit more steep. But it still looks natural. It's basically, the best way to put it, I think, is you're trying to make the unnatural look natural. I think that's genuinely the best way to put it. Because of how I've layered this top bit, right? I've had to cut this in, right? And because I'm cutting it in, I'm not gonna like do this. Because then that just looks awkward, right? That looks like it's generated by a game. What we're doing here is that we're smoothing it out to make it look as much as a natural occurring thing as possible. Now that I've pretty much completed it, I should probably do this in an earlier stage, by the way, but like now that I have completed it, I can do a final check of looking around it. It's like, is this too, like, is it too soft? Is it too harsh? Like right now, this side looks good. Go over to this corner. Maybe I can make this bit droop a bit more. And then that looks like it's too pointed. So now I can do something like this. And now that looks fine, right? This looks a bit harsh. So maybe I'll do something like this. Okay, but now this looks too flat. So I can go here. I can do something like that. And now that's entirely fine. Go over to this one. This looks very soggy. And by that I mean it looks like it's way too sloped. So what I can do here is I can make it look more harsh by cutting off edges like that. And simply by that one change, it's now looked a lot more defined. And then we can go over to this corner. This corner is also very soggy, but I don't think the problem is that I need to build more onto it, because if I do that, I think it's going to look way too bulky. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut it. Funny enough, I've basically given you every example that you would ever need, just by accident. So look at that. Now that looks a lot more defined, but at the same time, like, it doesn't look too bulky. It's completely okay. Like, this is a bit too awkward now, because now this is a bit too square, so maybe I'll just punch off that block. And then this looks a bit too sharp, so I'll cut off that. And yeah, I'll place the block there. And there we go. And basically just, like, explain away the thought process, right? Which, to be honest, there isn't much. All it is figure out what path you're going to go down. That's all it is. So I'm going to have it uh, steer towards the hill, away from the hill, and, pardon me, and then adjacent to the hill once again, right? This is what I'm going to do. So first, I'm just going to take one of these blocks. Just one of them. That's all I'm going to do. A lot of the time, I just use path blocks as the starting one because you just make it with a shovel. Okay, that should be fine right now, right? So already, right, this now looks like a path. Already. And all I did was change a couple blocks. So now I'm going to take a second block, like Podzol, and I'm going to start mixing that in with this path. Now, it's looking even better. Maybe I can mix up a bit, like, do a couple outliers, like, a bit further away from the path. Like, your path wasn't bad. It was mainly the location. That's what made it so awkward. Like, I swear, I sound like I'm actually an architect or something. And location, location, location. But it's true. It genuinely is true. Like, if you want to get better at building, there is one thing you need to focus on. Location. Okay, so now I've got Podzol in here, right? And this is a decent path already. It just looks like it's missing stuff. That's where our third block comes in. But then, finally, we're going to add coarse dirt, because one, coarse dirt cannot turn into grass, which means it will stay. And not only coarse dirt will not change into grass, but also coarse dirt gives us a separate texture, and it makes it look like the ground has actually been used. So if you notice with a path in real life, if you notice a lot of what I'm saying is I'm comparing this to real life. If you compare your builds, it's literally like regular art. If you compare something to real life, if you give yourself a reference, it looks so much better because you understand how it works. Coarse basically what the coarse dirt does in this part is it basically represents um like people have been using this path and they're actually kicking up the dirt. That's basically what it represents. So, like, here's the thing, right? I use path blocks as the main block, and I use a lot of it. Podzol I use a lot more sparingly. Coarse dirt I can actually kind of use, like, a bit more frequently, but, like, still trying to be, like, a bit reserved with it. So I can do, like, a bit of a mix between. I think you're now realizing what build school actually is. It's not like me telling you a step-by-step tutorial, like, oh, here's how I do it. Like, here's the exact thing of what you need to do. It's more so like, I'm teaching you the fundamentals, saying you can go and learn yourself. Like, I will always recommend people to, like, go watch, like, Green's videos, like, especially his Green's video on, like, how not to build. It's a really good video. It's a ridiculously good video. And, like, by the time I watched it, I was like, yeah, I kind of already know how to build. I watched it, my building skyrocketed. I actually became so much better. Okay, there you go. So now, like, if I go above, right? You see how much more of a path this looks like? So, like, what you showed me was very, like, linear. It was basically straight paths. Like, even if you were to go on a diagonal, you weren't, like, it had no flow, right? You would just diagonal. Which is good for some things, especially practical things, right? Like, say, for example, speed highways. Highways have to be straight because you're moving at such a high speed. Okay, I'll go over everything again. Like, here's some small little decorations that you can simply do to a path like this. One, it is quite literally that simple. Another thing is if you want to make it a bit more technical, you can do this. Like, this is just, it's okay. I would do this closer to, like, a town. Like, not too far out, though. Like, if you're doing something that's completely in the wild, and, like, you're doing a long path, I'd do more of these, if they make more sense. You can do archways like this, if it's, like, a garden, and then when you talked about bushes, this is actually how I do bushes. Grass, bushes, grass, leaves, and moss. It's basically it. There is no need to overcomplicate this at all. Could you also not add flower bushes? You could. You definitely could. Um, like the only problem I have with flower bushes a lot of the time, like I'll use them in gardens, right? But that's basically all the only place I'll really use them. The reason for that is simply because they obscure a lot of vision. Is the only real reason. Like the only one is a rose bush, right? If I want to give this detail, the only way I can make this block work is if I place it like all the way in the back there. And that's basically it. Like, I can do this, I guess. Like, that, and then this, I guess. Right? And that's basically how I make that work. But, like, if I'm placing them in the front, it's gonna block so much vision. Right? I meant azalea leaf. That's completely fine too. You scatter it out, basically. And that's how you make it. This is how you make it work. You scatter it about, so then it's not like it's so prevalent that it's like, oh, this is the entire bush. Give me a type of tree. Give me a type of tree. Rainbow. You're annoying. I guess I'll just do oak. It's fine. But basically, what you're gonna do is you're going to grab the full block. What? No one uses the full block. No, you're gonna use the full block. We are now gonna nerd ball. What we're then gonna do is we're gonna expand on the nerd ball. Gonna do something like this. Gonna give it a bit more shape. We can take that down. We can go here. We can go into the ground here. So that's how I basically build the base of the tree. And then something I might do is I'll build it out and I'll change up the shape. A lot of the times I prefer to stay away from making it like a single block thin, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But if I'm gonna make it a stick thin, I'm not gonna change direction. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make branches out from it. The trunk I'll like to keep like a single direction, so normally pointing up. Hello, hello.
Hello. I
Uh,
also do know that some people do use half slabs to give it a bit of more of a muscle curve to it to give it a more flesh out in certain parts of it.
you do, but I always keep that as a final step personally. The reason why
Ah.
is because I like to actually visualize the shape first. Basically, like you see how I've actually made a full-on shape without ever putting a single leaf on this tree, or actually defining the shape with a slab or a stair or a fence.
Mm.
That's basically what I've done here. And now I can use leaves. So what I'll do is I'll actually just mostly just fully cover these branches. That's how I'll start this. Um, and that's how I basically start all of my leafing process. I'll literally just cover the branches, and then I'll pick and take away from whatever I feel is right. Because specifically oak trees, they're actually really airy, right? They're like you can tell like they're gonna flow in the breeze. So
Yeah.
with that, you can now know like, oh, okay, so maybe it'll have like droops. So now like with this looks fine. Of course, I could cover this, like this top bit. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to now use the same process that I actually used for this hill. I'm going to use this as a template. So now I'm going to bridge up, but I'm still going to try and make it airy. So like I'm going to have ups and downs, shake it all about, and just continue to basically have everything that I would need. But like, see here how like just droop the leaves? And then I'll make sure that it like doesn't look too stick thin on one side, so
makes sense.
Like, it's a lot better than just making a vanilla tree.
True. It looks
Because
also way better.
I mean, because it sucks. Like you'll put so much effort into a build, and then you're like, well, now I feel like it's there's not enough greenery, right? Then you'll put down a tree, but then you just put it down a regular vanilla tree, and like I'll go ahead and look at someone's build like that. It's like, bro, you put so much effort into this build, and then you gave up last second, really? Like seriously? Because you can even do this off of a vanilla tree. You just take a vanilla tree, and then you just expand upon it. It's just I prefer to do it like completely raw. Just, I swear to God, no one take that out of context. I'm about to move on to mushrooms for you. Like the only thing I can really do to this tree at this point is one, I can muscle it, and two, I can change up the leaves, and that's basically it. I'm not bothered to change up the leaves right now, but like what you can do is you can mix in spruce and jungle leaves, other ones that I specifically like to do. If you want to do a cherry blossom tree, you can add in azula trees, azula leaves, I mean. But like, I mean like a cherry blossom tree that's like just starting to bloom, otherwise you wouldn't use leaves at all, you'd use just pink blocks.
Yep.
But yeah, if I was
Oh,
to muscle this tree, what's the one that goes
but as
oak
it,
again? Is it
the
spruce?
version you are in, that actually
It is,
are
yeah.
cherry blossom leaves now.
Oh, are there?
If you forgot about the new tree
Oh yeah.
leaves.
I mean, I wouldn't want to use them entirely though. So like, okay, here I'm just going to basically just full muscle this out. So I'll do something like that, and then this side is basically completely fine. Tab on there. That's entirely fine because it's hidden. That can go upside down. This can do this. I basically just want to like fill in like where it's a bit like cracked. So actually up, yeah, up here I can keep that as a slab. Here I can actually change that to a fence. This can be a fence. But like at the same time I don't want to go overboard, right? So
Makes
like
sense.
that can go there.
It still feels natural.
Exactly. So that's basically all I'll do.
And it looks really great.
That's,
Without looking like the default Minecraft oak tree.
yep, basically.
And actually looking like as something. Oh yeah, this actually looks great.